Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining tonight's live stream. I am really excited about tonight's show. We get to introduce you to a couple of wonderful guests that I actually met when I was out doing my Pedal for Progress ride from Sacramento to San Diego in California. Today, you're going to be meeting Arthur and Alexis from a wonderful organization, Youth Empowerment in San Diego. And so when I bring them on, I'm going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and their organization to our audience. So we're really excited to be connecting with some people that I actually had the opportunity to visit with, which has been a unique thing that we haven't been able to do yet so far on this show. So there's been a lot of exciting updates in the Cherry Willow world in the last month since our last live. Please continue to stay up to date with our social media to see the wonderful partnerships, like this partnership with Youth Empowerment. We have a really cool design that we're going to be featuring in the show, and I'm really excited for Alexis and Arthur to talk about, how that design came about and how they went about creating it. It was a really unique contest that they ran, and so very excited to introduce that. And then from a Cherry Willow standpoint, we are continuing to work on, really being an advocate for not only people experiencing homelessness, but also for nonprofits by partnering with them, creating those apparel collaborations and helping them get their message out in the community, by using apparel as a way to do that. So if you are out there and you know of any nonprofits, I would love to have a conversation with them and, explain a little bit about how it works and how we can help benefit each other in the spirit of collaboration. So with that intro, I would love to bring on, Arthur and Alexis from Youth Empowerment, and really excited to have you both here today.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Cherry Willow. Y'all doing some great work. My name is Arthur Soriano. I experienced 23 years of incarceration, system-induced trauma, inhumane isolation torture within the prison system. And because of my traumas that I experienced in the past, of not being able to manage my feelings, and for example, anger would turn into violence, or resentment would turn into drugs. And so I was just this lost kid that wanted a sense of belonging, and I found it in gangs. And so I've been out now in the community for the last 12 years, and due to my experience, that's why we founded Youth Empowerment. We work with the community, youth, individuals, and families that have been impacted by the justice system, and doing everything in our power to dismantle the school to prison pipeline from a credible messenger lens. What is a credible messenger? A credible messenger is an individual that has lived experience in the justice system and has that same shared lived experience with the population that we're serving. Our superhero strength is we have access, we're able to de-escalate the violence because we can see it, we were part of that in the past. We have cultural proficiency within the community, and we're able to connect with youth and families, the tias, the grandpas, and so we know the specific community, then we're able to bring resources. So we're excited with the collaboration and partnership and doing everything in our power to build healthy communities together.
And that's so such a powerful story, and we'll get into trauma and the impacts that people experiencing homelessness have with that as well. Alexis, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and let the people know your story a little bit and how you became connected with such a wonderful organization.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone at Cherry Willow. I'm Alexis Crespo. I'm the Chief Program and Development Officer here at Youth Empowerment. I found my way over here from the East Coast about 4 years ago, and I've been with Youth Empowerment ever since. So my lived experience looks a little bit different than Arthur's. Though myself, I was not formally incarcerated. My family was in and out of the prison system throughout the East Coast, New York, Connecticut, and then I unfortunately lost my sister to an accidental overdose to fentanyl about 7 years ago. Ever since that day, I've taken it upon myself to ensure that any youth I come across does not fall down the same fate that she did. And working with organizations like this and working alongside Arthur, who has fought this mission and has allowed me to be a part of this, we really want to create healthy communities and pour back into them and let them know their alternative lifestyles than going down the negative one, choosing violence over healing. And we're just really excited to be here today and share a little bit more and hope that our stories can save other people from falling down the same fate that we've had.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you sharing that, Alexis. And that's something that has been a common theme ever since I've been working in the nonprofit space. I'm connected with so many powerful people that have overcome just really difficult circumstances, and they've been able to take that and create a very positive space to help others, navigate those challenging circumstances that they went through. And that's been one of the best things for me about hosting these live shows, having the partnerships, and doing the collaborations is learning about those really powerful stories. Because my connection to homelessness is not through lived experience. But I did have a brother that has been in and out of the prison system and has experienced homelessness at times, and I've had other family members that have gone through mental health crises. And so when you really dive into trauma and you learn about the impacts that it has, especially at a younger age, and if you're not processing it, there's so much that people don't really understand. And I think that when it comes to homelessness in particular, and I'd love to understand a little bit more about both of your stories, people disconnect that experience of trauma from being homeless and living out on the street without being certain where your next meal is going to come from. And trauma is something that we can all relate to. People have experienced trauma at different stages, different times in their lives. So Arthur, I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you were experiencing when you were incarcerated, and when did you make that decision to really use that to create something that was a safe space for you so that they didn't go down the path that you went down?
Yes, and so trauma has no skin color, and everybody within the institutions has unresolved trauma. And so, for example, for myself, as a young kid, I didn't have a father in the home. I had a mother, single mother, working 2 jobs, so I was a latchkey kid. So she would try to protect me by just keeping me in the apartment while she went and cleaned houses for a living. So we lived in poverty. And I had family sexual abuse in the house. So that created a form of resentment, that created a form of fear, and it created anger. And I didn't know how to cope with these feelings and didn't understand the impacts of trauma that had affected my life at that young of an age. And so when I went into gangs, I found that belonging within gangs, but guess what? All these gang members that I was connected with, we all validated one another, because guess what? 95% didn't have daddies at the home as well. 95% has some type of abuse at the house as well. So all these adverse childhood experiences, we were validating each other's trauma, but not communicating, right? Because we didn't know how to express that. And so we didn't know how to connect that. And so going in through these systems was another sense of trauma, a system-induced trauma, in particular, the courts, right? The court systems could be very scary for a young kid. And so navigating that process of family members, like trying to figure out how to navigate, what's the paperwork, what's the court dates, what does it look like, what's the language, what does that mean, is very traumatic for a family in general. And so going through that process, when I went to prison, guess what? We were in a yard full of men, and everyone had unresolved trauma. And so you put all these men in prison with unresolved trauma, there's going to be chaos that's going to happen. And so I held that in. And the way that I coped with it was just going back to that lifestyle that I was a part of, that I knew. I was a young kid at the age of 18. And so the older individual would school me and tell me that you're going to do this and this is how you're going to do it. And that was traumatizing in itself. So when I returned into the community, I didn't have no resources while I was in prison. What I mean by no resources, no personal development, no self-help books, no curriculum that's going to help me connect with the trauma, the impacts, the healing component. I didn't have that. That didn't exist. And so everything that I experienced was criminal and also self-taught, educational. We were able to go to school, get our AAs and whatnot, but that was it. So our growth was like, it was staggered into that. And so when I reentered back into the community, first I had made a decision that I was gonna change my life. I had to make a choice that, you know what, I'm gonna create this new pathway, and somehow, some way, I'm gonna figure it out. And so I met this mentor of mine's, white lady, blonde hair, blue eyes. I connected with her, and she had a facilitation of groups every Thursday at the Mid City Police Department. So out of all places, right? I have been to that Mid City Police Department on many other occasions, but not in this form. So I took a leap of faith of going in there. There was 20 kids. And I went in there and I told my story. But this lady had workshops on nothing but trauma, vicarious trauma, acute trauma, the chronic trauma, the system-induced trauma, generational trauma. And I was like, bling, bling, bling. I could relate to that. That's what I'm going through. And at that time, I was mandated by my probation officer 8 classes per week. So I was taking criminal addictive classes, anger management, personal development, self-help, and A. So I was going through this process and I was eagerly intrigued. And so I became the facilitator within a month and a half process because I was really understanding the impacts of trauma that had affected my life. And once I was able to do that, then the process of healing began to kick in, and the resilience. And so me going through my process personally allowed me to identify what works or what can work for individuals that have experienced homelessness, fatherless home, abuse in the home, generational trauma, poverty, and all these struggles, all these layers, right? And so I was able to connect with organizations that have the evidence-based practices and the evidence-based approach and different curriculums, and seeking safety, for instance, connects with PTSD, substance abuse, and trauma. It's one of my favorite curriculums when we're talking about specific substance abuse. And so we were able to go through the process, get proper training, train all the staff, and use our superpower, which is the same shared lived experience, but connected in an evidence-based approach, in a trauma-informed approach, a restorative approach. And so what does that mean? Being trauma-informed with connecting with the population that we serve, youth, individuals, and families, individuals that have been impacted by homelessness. You got to have empathy. But at the same time, empathy is putting yourself in that person's shoes. And sometimes that could be difficult for the individual that's working with that individual. So you could just come from a place of compassion as well. Just be compassionate and be there for that person. Like, show that person love. That person probably hasn't heard kind words of, waking up in the morning. Good morning. How you doing? How's your day? Being motivated. And so that's probably not been a part of his life since he's been living. And so showing that approach, a trauma-informed approach, having effective communication, supportive staff, individual life support. And at the end of the day, each individual wants to feel safe. So creating them safe spaces allows us to have that approach. And it allows us to work the evidence base. It allows us to work the shared lived experience. And I just love seeing the process of growth, where they're at when they first come in the door. That conversation might be, you know what, the hell with your program. I don't want nothing to do with it. And that's it. And then in a month, okay, the process starts changing, right? And it starts changing and changing. And so getting to a point where 6 months later, they're able to communicate about their traumas, their emotions, the coping skills, and you could just see the growth from 6 months to a year and a half to 2 years. We're not a 6-month program. We're not a year program. We're a lifetime program. And so it's all about building relationships with the population that we're serving, being genuine, having empathy, and being compassionate in the work that we're doing.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I love that you use compassion. And similarly, like in the homelessness space, I think that's what it takes. And also just curiosity, like being curious about someone's situation, not assuming that, the XYZ is why they're here. And Alexis, I'd love for you to share a little bit about the work that you do within the organization, with the youth, and some of the actions that you all are taking in the community to ensure that the youth are going down those right paths. And it's really, yeah, I have 3 kids myself, and I'm a single dad, and my 9-year-old is certainly taking on 13. So I dealing with teens, I can imagine that there's a lot of challenges that come with that. So anything that you can share, I think would be really cool for people to know how you kind of shepherd them through that process of getting them past that resistance maybe, and then really building this community. That would be really cool to hear.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I was really drawn to youth empowerment was because after the loss of my sister, I realized if there was an organization or a place for her to go, like youth empowerment and like our programming, we might not have lost her. And youth empowerment follows the youth through every stage of their life. If any of our kids kind of backtrack a little bit, we're still there. A lot of other programs kind of turn their back on them. Oh, you're not a fit for our program anymore because of X, Y, and Z. But youth empowerment, Arthur's done a really good job of instilling us. No, we're here on this journey with them. And Arthur said it beautifully. We are a lifetime program. While we might be able to address some of your traumas and help you work through them within a year to 2 years, we are here for you no matter what, through every phase of your life. And how I got involved was I was originally hired on as Arthur's executive assistant. And then one thing that we do at Youth Empowerment is in order for you to move up, you have to go through program. So I started overseeing our school programs and just started talking to the staff, seeing what kids might be a little bit more troubled, some of the kids that they might identify, because some of the teachers also don't grow up in these neighborhoods and aren't aware of the nuances that the kids are going through. Especially now, 2025 looks much different than when I was younger and then when all of us were younger as well. So we start with the kids, and I am a little bit further away from programming now. I get to oversee all of our programs and work with our leadership team. So our director of school programs and our manager of school programs really do the heavy lifting for this. They go into the schools, they make connections with the kids because they were the kids. They can identify what those kids look like, the behaviors that they have, the friends that they keep, the way that they dress, the way that they carry themselves, the shields that they might be putting up because other people aren't seeing through that. They're seeing a bad kid, but they're seeing someone who's reaching out for help, but they just don't know how to ask for that. So they do a really good job. We build relationships with the schools, and then we go in at lunchtime and we hang out with the kids and we talk with them and go check in on them. Wherever they are, we try to be. And one of the things that we say here is empowerment. If the kids have no free time, that's great for us. They go to school, they come with us, and then they go home to sleep, rinse and repeat. We also try to find them things to do on the weekends as well that might be outside of our programming, just to show them different lifestyles. We've really gotten them involved in extracurricular activities and enrichment activities. Some of our native San Diego kids have never been to the beach before. Arthur and our team brought them to the beach for the first time. If anyone else thinks of San Diego, they think of a surfing beach town. But that's not the reality for our kids. And what we talk about in the community is that there's 2 San Diegos, the tourist San Diego and the everyday San Diego that our kids are walking on these streets. There's a lot of gang violence over here, and a lot of our kids are looking for a sense of community, and at times they turn to gang violence. What we've tried to do is pivot them to come to us instead. So we pay them stipends to be in our programs. We program Monday through Friday with them. We have wonderful relationships with the San Diego Unified School District. Particularly, we work really closely with the principals and we work with the counselors to ensure that everyone who is on the kids' team, we are a part of that team as well. We work directly with their parents and guardians to ensure that they are receiving wraparound services. And we can identify this because we were those kids. A lot of people mean well and want to come into this work, but when Arthur was talking about lived experience credible messengers, it's much easier to talk to someone who's been there and lived the same life that you might have lived. Now, we might have done that way before the kids that we have right now, but there are still tips and tales that bring us all together, and we can see it every day in the work that we do and in the kids that we service. They're just looking like everyone. They're looking for a place for belonging. They're looking to find themselves. And a lot of times they find themselves in the youth empowerment programs. We get to see immense growth in these kids. Some kids come to us very angry and upset, and they don't really know how to vocalize that. After going through our programs, they're evidence-based, and we work on socio-emotional development. From handling difficult feelings to responsible behaviors to how to communicate what a family dynamic should look like. Family is really, really big in low-income communities because at the end of the day, all we have is one another. Some of the most generous people that you will ever meet come from low-income communities because we know that at the end of the day, it's your neighbor that you can lean on, and not all the time the resources or the systems that are there set in place to be able to help us. So being able to see the kids and have been those kids, it makes it a lot easier for us to be able to reel them into our program and then Of course, once you pay them and let them know we're here for not just you, but your entire family, they really are sold on that. A lot of our kids, they were a little iffy about being on our program at first. And then once we bring in mom or dad or grandma, they blossomed. They opened right up. They're like, this is why I'm angry. I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. This is what's going on at home. Can you help with this? And just because something might not be in our wheelhouse, Arthur and the rest of our team have done a wonderful job of creating partnerships with additional resources that we can do referrals to them. So now we're sharing our kids and sharing our adults and sharing our parents and guardians with these other community resources that are just elevating the entire family. And you see it every single day and how they carry themselves now, how they talk, how they represent our community, how they represent youth empowerment. Arthur is really big on making sure the youth voice is present in everything that we do. So anytime that we get the go ahead to bring our youth with us, they're tagging along with us to conferences. They're speaking on behalf of youth empowerment. Arthur and one of our kids were just recently on the news speaking about our workforce development coalition that we created for our reentry department. And it's just times like that that show this population. A lot of times people might turn their back on them, but our kids are our most under-resourced, yet our most complained about demographic. And Arthur has allowed us and our entire team to really grab the horse by the horns and run with it. And our team has done wonders, and they make deep rooted connections with our kids that even after they graduate from high school and move on to college, they still keep in touch with us. They come to the office and just check in with us. They call us, text us, send us letters from the military. So we were those kids. So we know how to identify them and we know how to service them. Because if we had a program like Youth Empowerment, we might not have gone down that path. Now, in hindsight, I'm grateful we all went down that path because we were able to pour into the community. But we want to help people not have to have the same story as we do.
And I just want to add, I'm a federal, state, and gang expert as well in the courts. And so when we're talking about crisis and working with population that need the most support, like I read the discoveries, I see the videos, the gang enhancements, murder cases, attempted murder cases, you name it. Like I've worked on probably 60 in the last 3 years. And so what I've noticed is COVID-19 had a big impact like in our community. And now we're like feeling the effects of COVID-19. They gave these kids laptops. If you could learn through this process, you can learn. If you have a family member that is tech savvy and can help you. And so it evolved into this social media, these phones, to where now the scale of mental health went up, which created the crisis of homelessness, the gangs, the culture, the abuse, these kids, they want that sense of belonging so much that they were doing crimes, going all the way live like we're doing now, right? And showing it on air while they're doing it. And so, I mean, who would do that? First of all, because it's a cry for help.
Yeah.
It's a cry for I want to be a part of. And so what we've been seeing is this crisis of homelessness within the communities, and working with our adult reentry population, adults that are reentering back into the community. We offer the healing, the resource, the mentorship, navigation, case management. And so our weakness is having that housing resource when they come back out, which they'll go to some sober living homes, but then 3 to 4 months, but then that specific funding runs out. So then where do they go next? Right? And that goes for our youth as well. Couch surfing, that's a form of homelessness.
Absolutely.
Right? And not having a bedroom that you could go to, not having some fresh food, some breakfast, lunch, dinner. And so trying to navigate that process when reentering back into the community could be very difficult. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, that the impacts of COVID-19 has created a lot of harm within California and throughout the United States. The fentanyl, the overdosing, the drugs, and the list keeps on going on and on. And so, like Alexis said, we need a true collaboration to get the message out there, as well as really doing the work and working with the population. and really educating also the other communities that aren't part of the nonprofit world that there is being impact made by data. And we are what we measure. We gotta measure what we're doing. And so once we're able to do that, then we could show that. And this works because a lot of people in the community are unaware or uneducated on the impacts. But us coming together, collaborating, can unite that, and then we can spread the message that much more.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition into our next topic, which was, how together we go farther. And I think that, really in the nonprofit space, like I've connected with you all and so many wonderful people that have empathy, they have the knowledge, they have the data and the experience. But that's the biggest challenge is connecting with people that maybe aren't as close to it, right? They haven't lived in poverty. They haven't experienced the abuse. They haven't been close to being homeless or experiencing homelessness. And how do we help them understand, what the work is being done in the nonprofit space, but also how they can play a part in really building that community. Particularly when you talk about homelessness, like you said, housing is healthcare, and it's not viewed that way. But you can't really ask someone to make progress on mental health or if they're battling an addiction if they don't know where they're going to live that night, or if they're going through a 90-day program and they don't have somewhere to go after that, then they re-enter that same environment. And then, the likelihood is they're probably going to go down that similar path as before because they just don't have that foundation to build from. And so I think that's, again, why I try to relate it back to trauma, because most people have experienced some level of trauma and they can relate with, all right, well, if I avoided this, what did I do? Maybe when they're stressed out, maybe they get a glass of wine at night, or maybe they have a safe space that they can go and just take time to process whatever they went through. And so it's like, if you think about people that are homeless, the trauma of living on the street every night, trauma of not knowing where your next meal is coming from, and these are systems that we can all come together to improve and really build a community around the people, show them and be there for them if they do stumble. And it seems like what you have done an incredible job at Youth Empowerment is really building that trust. Because I know when I was a kid, I grew up in a healthy 2-parent household and I had trouble, using my voice. I had trouble just expressing difficulties or challenges that I was going through. And it wasn't anything near on the level that some of the kids, that go through your programs are experiencing. So I'd love if you could talk a little bit about, how we're using and we're collaborating, but how you're really building that trust inside of the program and encouraging these kids to, share their stories and not have to walk, these difficult paths alone.
So I went from I'm an extremist. You're going to get nothing in the middle. I live one life or the other. And so I went from, the police systems and probation and parole, it ain't working, to like this conflict and you ain't doing nothing for my rehabilitation. And I shifted that perspective into even with them, building relationships with them, building relationships with probation. That was our first contract that we received, was through the county, was with probation after a lot of years of advocacy and public safety here in San Diego. Us receiving, the state that put me away was now able to give me a resource. And so not just for myself, but for the community. And so guess what? That empowered me. That made me feel resilient. That made me feel, okay, like, we need to empower other staff and hire other staff that could do this similar work. And so when I say credible messenger, when I say the strengths of a credible messenger, the de-escalating, the shared lived experience with traumas and having that gift, you don't have to be an individual that has been impacted by the justice system to be a credible messenger. But you have to be trained, right? Like you have to be trained on the credible messenger approach, the roles and responsibility, and the fundamentals about mentorship. What's the research that's been out there throughout the United States? Mentorship works. Nationally, there's research that shows that it works. All you need is that one person, caring adult, that's there to help navigate that process. So what's the skills building in mentorship? Like what are we training individuals that are working with the populations? We got to give them the skills to be able to do the work. And skills building comes in many forms, and how to mentor. I mean, one of our greatest mentors, never been through the justice system. She's a female, but has that high energy, right? She has that high energy. And so she has the high energy, and she's able to make that connection, and all the kids love her. I remember when we were first doing our after school program, we were doing some evaluation on who's your best mentor. I mean, 29 of the kids said this lady, which was a problem, right? Because we need to have that equaled out to the other. So we got to that, but that just showed me, like, you know, the lady that had blonde hair, blue eyes, Dana Brown, like, you know, but it's individuals that support the work, that are moving it forward. And then once in the work, what are we doing to collaborate? I was checking out a clip from Victorious Voices earlier on Jimmy. He's an upcoming board member with Youth Empowerment. But we started this work together, and he said it perfectly, where if I'm mentoring somebody, but I'm busy because I'm with my family and I'm with my kids, but that kid, like, really needs me, and I couldn't be there because, you know, I have boundaries, and I got to tend to my family as well. We need more nonprofit organizations in the space, right, that are connected and doing the work, so that we can really be effective. And you know, in this work, man, it could get competitive, right, as far as like fundings and grants and everything. But we've been preaching this message over and over and over. And so what I've seen recently, in particular with lived experience organizations here in San Diego, is we're starting to come together, and we're starting to communicate. And like, okay, I'm with this kid, you're with this kid too, communicating, and it's being effective, and it's having a great impact. If there's a housing resource that needed, okay, we need a credible housing resource, not a resource where you send the participant to go there, and the first thing they say is they ain't even connecting with them on trauma-informed approach. They're just being punitive. Like, I mean, like, why the hell would that individual want to be their house? They'd rather be in the streets, right, than be there. So really genuinely creating these partnerships and collaborations with individuals that are doing the genuine work.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like that really speaks to, you know, what we're trying to create at Cherry Willow, is to encourage our nonprofit partners to come together and collaborate. Because to your point, it often is an incredibly competitive space, especially with, you know, some of the restrictions and funding that are coming down the pike. So really being able to work together and pool those resources, you know, discuss about how we can come together to are oftentimes serving a similar population or have a similar goal, and not be expending valuable resources on things that are counterproductive, and really working to facilitate by partnerships, by referrals, and make sure that, you know, the people that we all are existing to serve have the most support as possible. And I love that that's in the spirit of what you're all doing in San Diego, and really building that up. So I'd love to, maybe Alexis, I know Shauna is who originally reached out to you all and how you got connected with us. I'd love if you could talk a little bit about like what this collaboration has meant for you, and then we could tail into, you know, the last topic of the exciting design and kind of how that all went. I'm really looking forward to hearing about that.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So I had the pleasure of connecting with Anna. She reached out to me via email. I was a little surprised because the internet is a beautiful thing. People from both sides of our nation. We can talk easily and seamlessly. And when she approached with the Cherry Willow apparel for nonprofits, I was very intrigued by that. A lot of times, purchasing apparel for our nonprofits and using that as a way to advocate for our mission can be a little bit difficult to work with. Finding a right design, being able to make sure it's priced at the point that we can allow our community to feel like they're also being able to give back. And one of the things that we talked about, Matt, when you were here in San Diego, is that this is an opportunity for our community to be able to support us. A lot of times communities love what the nonprofits are doing, especially if they're directly impacted by that nonprofit, but they necessarily might not have the funding to be able to pour back into it. And nonprofits are the backbone of the communities. When all else fails for our community members, the nonprofits are still here fighting for them, advocating for them, and showing up. Funding or no funding, Arthur started this organization out of the money out of his pocket. And for years, almost 3 to 4 years, he did that for until we acquired our first grant. And being able to connect with a nonprofit that's all the way in New York when we're here in San Diego just shows that collaboration is possible if you have the right people at the forefront of that. So we were able to connect, and Shauna told me about this wonderful opportunity to be able to sell apparel, whether it's t-shirts, hats, you name it. That was an option for us on the table. So I brought that back to Arthur, and I was like, hey, I think we should really move forward with this. This sounds really appealing, and I think this might be a great way to get our entire community involved and give them something in return for their support for us and support for a larger cause. Because at that point, they're supporting both your cause and our cause. And now we got to get our kids involved. And I'm sorry if I'm jumping around, but I'm really excited about that. So we were able to get the kids involved. Arthur and I came up with what our slogan should be. And just based on his experience in the community, what we've poured into the community, what our people have gone through and fought to come back from, breaking the cycle. That's truly what we have done here and what we are teaching our community to be able to do themselves. A lot of times conversations are being had about our community without us at the table. And we're really trying to backtrack that because we deserve to have a seat at the table, because the people who know what is needed most are the people being affected by that. And that is us. So having lived experience at the table and then bringing our youth, as Arthur has instilled in all of us to do here at Youth Empowerment, their voice matters. So with that in mind, we decided to host a youth design competition. The winner would receive a $100 cash prize, and their t-shirt would be sold all over the Youth Empowerment website, all over the Cherry Willow website. And then we'd make this an entire awesome competition, because one thing that does well for kids is competition keeps them going. And we're very competitive over here, not just the kids, not just our adults, but the staff as well. So any chance that we get to compete, we always do. So we thought we'd bring that right to our kids. So we hosted about a 5-week design competition. Any of the kids in our school and after school program was able to join it. All they had to do was let us know what they were going to design, and they had to hit it by our deadline. So we had some wonderful pieces come in. It was really, really difficult to choose. It was so difficult that ultimately I let Arthur choose because I didn't want to have to do that. And then the designs were so fantastic that Arthur decided we were going to go with 2. So we have one design on the front, one design on the back, and the kids were even more excited because now 2 of them got the $100 cash prize. We're going to be able to buy a piece from a t-shirt for all of our staff, which they don't even know about. So they're going to be really excited once they get that. Some of them know about the design competition, but we kind of kept it like under wraps a little bit so we can surprise them with the t-shirt. All of our people in our youth programs know because they were a part of that and were able to submit and show us what artwork they thought should be implemented into the design competition. So yeah, as you can see, we are so excited. Our kids are incredible artists, and art is also another form of healing. A lot of times we work with our evidence-based curriculums, but we don't want to just journal all day with our kids. And sometimes having a tough conversation might not be the best space for them at that point. So let's give them other avenues to be able to express themselves and to be able to talk about something that is so meaningful to them of being born to break these cycles. Because while us at Youth Empowerment, the adults who have already broken those cycles for ourselves and for our families, we're now teaching the kids how to go back and do that for themselves. So these t-shirts are for sale. We are so excited. We're about to integrate them into our website too. And Arthur just told me before we jumped on, we are going to buy a bunch and sell them at our annual gala. So we're really excited about that as well. And what I was excited about, Matt, was when you reached out to me that some of your other partners wanted to have the same competition with some of their youth or some of their participants. And I think it's just a great way to allow your participants to feel like they're also pouring back in to the organization that's done so much for them, and allow the community, like we talked about before, to have a little piece of youth empowerment while also supporting us by funding, because that's the biggest barrier that we have as being a nonprofit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really excited to see how the designs turned out. And I'm really glad I didn't have to make the decision. So Arthur, props to you for how you decided. But yeah, really excited for these shirts. And yeah, we're also at Cherry Willow donating a shirt to each of the design contest winners. So really excited for them to get their hands on it and get to proudly share, that story of, not only the impact that youth empowerment is having on them, but I loved how you said about how art can be a form to express yourself. I didn't even necessarily put that together until you just said it, but like being able to provide another outlet, a creative outlet for working through some of the emotionally heavy things, challenges that these kids may have been going through, is really, really cool. So Arthur, I would love if you could kind of talk about, the two designs that you did pick, and maybe what resonated with you, and how you ended up, deciding on these two to move forward with.
Yes, and so I love the, breaking the chains, the black and brown representation. Even though, let's be real, everybody's affected in prison. There's Asians, there's whites, there's black, there's brown, and so, but it's broken, and we're here to break these cycles from trauma to resilience. We gotta not just focus, the traumas and like work on that, but like concentrate on the resilience component, right? And what are we doing to stay on that path? And what are we doing to help support this population? And so we the people was the expression of their words. And you can see they got the, the hands and the words, and they put some thought into it, right? And so for us to be able to show the specific community out here this message is going to be important. And just getting it out there to, man, let's get some probation officers to wear it. Let's get some, county people to wear it, right? A judge to wear it. Like, let's get a teacher to wear it, a principal to wear it, and so these kids to wear it, right? So that's what I'm thinking. And so it's a non-biased, right? Like it's pretty to the point. It's born to break cycles. We're here to break these cycles, and doing everything in our power to dismantle these cycles, from cycles of incarceration now to cycles of empowerment, and here to be born to break these cycles. So those were some thoughts. She didn't give me no names on who the kids were, and we just tossed it around. I think it was 4 to 5 to identify from, but we picked 2 of the best ones that were there and gave kudos to the other kids as well. And so we're looking forward to just spread the message of love.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And, that was really one of the purposes for my bike ride from Sacramento to San Diego, was just to inspire people to take action in their community. In addition to being able to meet Alexis and connect and learn about youth empowerment in your facility, we got to connect with 6 other nonprofits across California. And, regardless of where you may be tuning in from, I'm sure there's a wonderful nonprofit that is working in your community that you maybe not even are aware of. And so that's what I love about apparel is, it's a really great way to have that story. When you're representing a wonderful organization like Youth Empowerment, wearing these really cool shirts out in the community, and then someone's like, hey, what is that? What is Born to Break Cycles? Or, what does We the People mean to you? And then boom, now there's a really cool story behind it. The youth in the program, they got to design these shirts, and they get to tell the story of how youth empowerment has impacted them. And, now more people in the community are aware of the really valuable work that you're doing. And like I said, if it helps connect with a younger audience, I'm a millennial, like Gen Z, typically very, socially minded, but maybe not having enough funds to be high level philanthropic donors. But everyone can afford a shirt and then go out and represent that organization in your community and tell those stories. And that may get a connection to a new, philanthropic donor. That may get a new business or corporate sponsorship just by that storytelling and that in-person connection. And this is something that I say a lot whenever I'm on these digital platforms. Like, it's really cool what technology enables us to do. Me being in Chicago, you all being in San Diego, but also technology with the phones, Arthur, to your point earlier, it can disconnect you from the person that's right next to you. And so that's the cool thing about apparel, is it sparks that connection, that in-person opportunity. And so I really am excited for how these shirts came out, and really excited about the documentary that's going to be coming out here, hopefully within the next month, featuring you all's amazing program and, all of the other nonprofits we had the privilege of meeting with while we were out in California. And so it was just really, really amazing to connect with you all in person when I was out there.
Thank you so much for coming out here. It was amazing just being one of the many stops on your Pedal for Progress. And I love the way that you were advocating for a problem that we are looking to be able to solve, and something that if we all band together, we really can solve this. And it just really aligns, as Arthur talked about before. A lot of our kids and our parents and our adults do end up experiencing homelessness after being justice impacted or after coming home from incarceration. So I felt like this was just meant to be for us to be able to collaborate, work together, and share similar stories that we had, and really just be a powerhouse for the communities to come and to spread some light. And if anything can be done in proper collaboration. And that was at the forefront of when Arthur created this organization. And I feel like that was at the forefront of when you created Cherry Willow, and two powerful organizations coming together to spread this message. There's nothing we can't do for together. So thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned a couple of different things that you have coming up. I think you mentioned, Arthur, a show. I don't recall off the top of my head what it was. It was Violence.
Victorious Voices.
There you go. What was that, Alexis? I'm sorry.
So Victorious Voices, that's actually our podcast. When you came out, Matt, that was what you were featured on, and your episode will be launching very soon. So I'm excited about that. Arthur, I'd love for you to talk more about Victorious Voices and then let them know what Youth Empowerment has coming up for the rest of the year.
Yeah, so Victorious Voices, we work with individuals out here in the community, similar stories like Matt, representing impact on the population that we're serving. We connect with individuals that support credible messengers, individual lived experience, and just express their voices into creating more attention out there in the community. So this year, we're extremely busy, boots on the ground. We have our event coming up on November 7th, HEAL, Honoring Empowerment, Advocacy, and Leadership. And so we're really looking forward to that day. We actually have a keynote speaker, and he's one of our participants. So before this meeting, I was coaching them and the questions. And so we're really excited about that. Normally we go out and get a keynote speaker, but I was like, you know what? No, let's get one of our participants to be the keynote speaker. So I'm really looking forward to that. Throughout the year, that event, Victorious Voices, is if you want to join, send us a message. If you have any questions on credible messengers, impacts, might be interested in our trainings, which we have 7 different ones. We have an organizational transformational program, social enterprise, where we have all these 8 different modules. I'm also a trainer for restorative practice, trauma informed. And so any questions, just connect with us, and we'll do everything in our power to, if we don't have it, we can maybe point you in the right direction for a resource. So thank you, Matt. Thank you for having us. Thank you for creating this space, and let's do everything in our power to break the cycles, and we're born to break cycles. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Arthur and Alexis, for for coming on the show, but for allowing me to stop, when I was on my bike trip. And it was just so incredible to connect with people all across California that were working to make their communities a better place. And I think I shared this with you, Alexis, when I was out there. But the reason I picked the route from Sacramento to San Diego is it allowed me to stop in 7 of the 14 cities with the highest number of people experiencing homelessness in the country. And so we stopped at domestic violence shelters, we stopped at food banks, youth organizations, and that was just scratching just the tip of the nonprofits that are currently working to try to solve the problem of homelessness in California. And as we've seen, homelessness is just getting more prevalent nationwide. It touches every community, every race, gender, and it's something that we all can be better educated on. And especially with some of the cuts to Section 8 and HUD's funding that are coming in 2026, if we don't find a way to come together and build a community, it could get a lot worse. And so, I love to be able to have a platform and be able to bring, people like you that are doing amazing work in their communities on to share about that. And, I hope that anyone that may be watching today, that you're inspired to, at the very least, look at some nonprofits in your community and reach out, donate an hour of your time each week, learn a little bit more about the people that they serve. And I know that you can find a cause that you're passionate about. And, that's what I would encourage anyone watching. Please just go out and do that. Whether it's supporting youth empowerment, if you're there in San Diego, if you want to support our work at Cherry Willow, we would obviously love that as well. But just take that step and work towards bettering whatever community that you're in, wherever you happen to be. And then, and Alexis and Arthur, any other items that we didn't touch on, or anything that anyone watching, if they want to help support youth empowerment? I know the HEAL event sounds amazing, November 7th. Obviously, we have the shirts that we're going to be able to promote. So if you want to go and support both of our organizations, you can actually visit cherrywillowapparel.com. We have that collaboration live right now. So if you were moved by Arthur and Alexis's stories and the work that they're doing at Youth Empowerment, that's a great way to support our organization and our initiatives. But I'd love any closing thoughts or closing words from you before we say goodbye to the audience.
Yeah. Thank you, Arthur. We have Your Cause, Your Way on our website. So if you go to www.youthempowermentsd.org, you'll be able to see on our homepage, Your Cause, Your Way. You can send our kids to camp. You can help us get them more enrichment activities, help us do some more career exploration with them, also support some basic needs that they might need at home. A lot of times in our grants, we try to write in supportive services, but that doesn't necessarily always mean that those get accepted. So any form of being able to support. We also work with local food banks, and we also work with the other communities who can donate clothes to us. But Your Cause, Your Way is on our website. If you feel inspired, we would love for you to donate. And just thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for letting us share a little bit about youth empowerment. And thank you for showing up when you did not have to on a Tuesday afternoon and evening to hear about a little nonprofit in San Diego. We are doing big things. We are small but mighty, and we will continue to be here for our community. Arthur, thank you.
Thank you. And first and foremost, I'm a husband. I have 4 kids, 2 through marriage, and a 6-year-old a girl, and then a 9-year-old boy. And so my ultimate mission is to break all these generational curses within my family that's connected to the work that we're talking about. And so being able to dismantle that and create a safe space for them so that they could grow and be leaders in their communities is my ultimate goal. On the community, my ultimate goal is being a voice for the voiceless and building up leaders, and then moving out the way. Building up leaders and moving out the way. And I say that from a lived experience perspective. I want to see them all grow, break these cycles, and that's why we're here. We were born on this earth to break cycles. So looking forward to any type of support. Love the shirts, support Cherry Willow and ourselves, And so let's just break these cycles and doing everything in our power to build healthy communities. Thank you very much.
Well, I really appreciate you both coming on and sharing about your stories and the work that you're doing. And just love the spirit of collaboration and everything that youth empowerment stands for. So thank you again for coming on. And for everyone in the audience, thank you again for tuning in. It really means a lot to us that you are taking time out of your busy work week and learning more about, a cause that we're very passionate about. And hopefully you're inspired to take action in your community and hopefully support our organization by buying those really cool shirts. I'm sure that the youth that design them would really appreciate it. So thank you all again for tuning in, and we will see you next time.